If you've ever lain awake doing math in your head, chasing a number that keeps moving further away, no matter how much you earn, this story is for you. There's a particular kind of fear that has nothing to do with poverty. It's the fear that visits people with full granaries and heavy purses. It sits beside them at dinner. It wakes them at 3 a.m. to whisper that whatever they have, it isn't enough, and it never quite will be. If you know that whisper, you already know the man at the center of this story. Today, I want to tell you about a merchant who built one of the largest trading houses of his generation, and a monk who owned nothing at all, and a question that passed between them one evening that most of us are afraid to even ask ourselves. The monk's answer took only 7 words. 7 words that undid a man who had spent 40 years accumulating. But we'll get to them. First, you need to understand how the merchant got to that evening, and why a man with everything came looking for a man with nothing. Before we go further, I want to ask you something. Tell me in the comments, what is the number in your head? The salary, the savings figure, the amount that you've quietly promised yourself will finally let you exhale. You might be surprised how many people are carrying the exact same number, and how few of them have ever said it out loud. His name was Tomas, and by the time he was 50, he owned 4 warehouses along the river, 4 ships that carried his cotton and his spices from port to port, and a house with more rooms than he had ever bothered to walk through. He had grown up with nothing. His father had died owing money to 3 different men, and Tomas had spent his whole childhood watching his mother apologize at doorways for debts that weren't hers to carry. He had promised himself, somewhere around the age of 9, that he would never again feel that particular shame, the shame of a door closing because you didn't have enough behind you. So he built. He built with a kind of fury that people mistook for ambition, though it was closer to a wound that never fully closed. Every contract he signed, every ship he added to his fleet, was a brick laid against a fear that had moved into him before he was old enough to name it. For 30 years, the building worked. Each new warehouse quieted the fear for a season. Each new ship bought him a few months of sleep. But the fear always came back, a little hungrier than before, asking for more square footage, more gold, more distance between himself and the boy whose mother apologized at doorways. By the time this story begins, Tomas had more wealth than his father could have imagined in 10 lifetimes. And still, most nights, he lay in a bed larger than the house he grew up in, doing the same arithmetic that had haunted him at 9 years old. Except now, the numbers had 6 digits instead of none. This is the part of the story you should sit with for a moment, because it's the part that repeats in different clothing in almost every life. The debt had been paid off decades ago. The threat was gone, but the fear had never once checked to see if it was still needed. It had simply kept working, the way old habits do, long after the danger that built them has disappeared. One evening, restless and unable to explain even to himself why a man of his fortune should feel this hollow, Tomas left his house and walked toward the edge of town, where a small monastery sat among fig trees, half forgotten by the wealthy district that had grown up around it. He had passed it 1,000 times without stopping. That night, for reasons he couldn't have articulated, he stopped. He found an old monk named Anong sitting outside on a low stone step, a wooden bowl beside him, empty except for a few grains of rice left from the evening meal. Anong owned that bowl, a robe, and very little else. He had walked away from a wealthy family 40 years earlier, and had never once, as far as anyone in town could remember, expressed regret about it. Tomas sat down uninvited, which was unlike him, and for a while, neither man spoke. Then Tomas said, almost against his own will, "I have everything a man could want, and I cannot sleep. I don't understand it. Tell me what is wrong with me." But what Tomas didn't know was that Anong had heard some version of this exact sentence dozens of times before, from farmers and from the wealthiest merchants in the province alike. The words were always different. The sound underneath them was always the same. Anong didn't answer right away. He looked at the empty bowl beside him for a long moment, and then he asked Tomas a question that seemed, at first, almost insulting in its simplicity. He asked, "How much is enough?" Tomas laughed, a short, uncomfortable laugh. "That's easy," he said. "A little more than I have now." He meant it as a joke. Anong did not smile. "And when you have that," Anong said, "how much will be enough then?" Tomas opened his mouth to answer and found, to his genuine surprise, that he had no answer ready. He had never once, in 30 years of building, asked himself where the building was supposed to stop. There had always been a next warehouse, a next contract, a next ship to commission. The number had never been fixed. It had always been more than this. And this is where everything in Tomas began, very quietly, to shift, though he wouldn't understand how much until later that night. Remember this detail, because it matters later. Anong did not tell Tomas to give away his warehouses. He did not tell him wealth was evil, or that ships and cotton were sins to be repented of. That would come later, in the versions of this story told by people who never actually sat on that step. What Anong did instead was far stranger and far more uncomfortable. He simply kept asking the same question, gently, from different angles, the way a physician presses different points on the body to find where the pain actually lives. When your father died owing money, Anong asked, what exactly were you afraid of? Tomas thought about this, that we would starve, that we would be turned out, that people would look at us the way they looked at debtors. And do you fear that now? Tomas started to say yes out of reflex, and then stopped. He genuinely didn't know. He had 4 warehouses. He had never once, since he was perhaps 25 years old, been in any real danger of starving. But the fear had never gotten the message. It had kept running on the old instructions, the way a bell keeps ringing long after the hand that struck it has left the room. So the danger is gone, Anong said, but the alarm is still sounding. That sentence landed in Tomas like a stone dropped into still water, and for a while he said nothing at all. The fig trees moved slightly in the evening air. Somewhere in the monastery behind them, someone was lighting a lamp. And this is where everything changed. Though from the outside, nothing about the scene looked dramatic at all. It was only an old man and a rich man sitting on a step. But inside Tomas, something that had been running without pause for 41 years had just been asked for the first time whether it still had a job to do. Tomas, still shaken, asked the question that had actually brought him there, though he hadn't known it until this moment. Then how do I know, he said, when I have enough? Give me a number. Tell me the figure and I'll stop there. And here Anong finally gave him the answer that this whole evening had been circling. He looked at Tomas for a long moment, not unkindly, and he said 7 words. Enough is a feeling, not a number. Silence. Tomas waited for more, the way you wait for the second half of a sentence that never comes. But that was the whole answer. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say that feelings were unreliable, that numbers were solid, that you could put a number in a ledger and know exactly where you stood. And that was precisely why he had built his life around numbers in the first place. Numbers didn't lie. Numbers didn't shift depending on his mood. But even as the argument formed in his mind, he understood, with a kind of quiet devastation, that this was exactly the trap Anong had just named. He had spent 40 years trying to solve a feeling with arithmetic. He had been using the wrong tool for the entire length of his life, and it had worked well enough to keep him busy, but never once well enough to let him rest. Anong let the silence hold for a while before he spoke again, more gently now. He said that the fear Tomas carried had been useful once. It had kept a 9-year-old boy alert to real danger, had perhaps even kept his family from a worse fate than the one they lived through. That fear was not something to be ashamed of. But a fear that was built for a 9-year-old could not simply be trusted to know when a 50-year-old man was safe. It had to be told. Someone had to sit the fear down, the way you would sit down an old, loyal guard dog who no longer recognizes that the danger it was trained for has long since passed, and gently let it rest. That merchant is you. Every time you refresh your bank balance, hoping the number will finally make the feeling stop. It is you, every time a raise or a bonus produces exactly 1 week of relief before the old restlessness finds its footing again and starts asking for more. The lesson underneath this story is not that money is dangerous, and it is not that ambition is a flaw. Tomas did not burn his warehouses down. He kept trading for years afterward, and he traded well. The lesson is narrower and, if you let it, more useful than that. The sense of enough is not a place your bank account can take you to. It is not a threshold that money crosses on your behalf while you wait on the other side. It is a feeling that has to be built deliberately, the same way you built whatever wealth you currently have. And it can be built at any income at all, including the one you have right now. If there is one concept to carry out of this evening on the stone step, let it be this. Sufficiency is not a number you reach, it is a practice you return to. Everything else, the size of the number, the size of the warehouse, is simply the stage on which that practice either happens or doesn't. There is a reason this particular lesson is so easy to hear and so hard to actually live. Our minds are built to solve problems with whatever tool worked before. If a number once meant survival, then a number will always feel, at first glance, like the fastest way back to safety. Nobody sits you down as a child and teaches you that sufficiency is a feeling cultivated in the body, the way you'd tend a garden, rather than a destination reached through accumulation. So most of us run the same experiment Tomas ran, sometimes for decades. Add more, wait for the relief. Notice the relief fades faster each time. Add more again. The experiment doesn't fail loudly. It fails quietly, one restless night at a time, which is exactly why it can continue for 40 years before anyone thinks to question it. So let me leave you with 3 small things. Practical enough to do this week. Philosophical enough to actually matter. First, tonight before you sleep, write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already possess. Not things you hope to have, things you already hold. It might be a friend who checks on you without being asked, or the fact that you woke up this morning without pain, or simply an evening quiet enough to hear yourself think. This isn't a gratitude exercise for its own sake. It's evidence, collected deliberately, against a fear that insists you currently have nothing. Second, find the number that's been running quietly in the back of your mind, the salary or the savings figure you've attached your peace to, and ask it Anung's question directly. When I reach this, how much will be enough then? Sit with the answer honestly. If the honest answer is a little more than that, you found the same trap Tomas found, and simply seeing it clearly is most of the work. Third, choose one decision this week, small is fine, where you act from a sense of already having enough rather than a sense of needing more. It might be leaving a generous tip you can afford, but would normally skip. It might be saying no to overtime you don't actually need. It might be spending an evening with people instead of spending it worrying about people. Let it be small. The size of the action matters far less than the direction it points you in. Picture, for a moment, Anung at the end of that evening, lighting the lamp beside his empty bowl as the last light leaves the sky over the fig trees, asking nothing of the world beyond what the evening has already given him. There is a particular kind of stillness in a person who has stopped waiting for a number to rescue them, and it has nothing to do with how much or how little sits in front of them. Tomas walked home that night without an answer written on paper, and without a single coin added to or subtracted from his fortune. But something in him had loosened for the first time in 40 years, the way a rope loosens once you finally realize you were never actually falling. He kept his warehouses. He kept trading. But he began, slowly and imperfectly, to ask himself Anung's question before every new venture, not as a rule imposed from outside, but as a practice he chose again and again. And the nights, though not all of them, began to grow quieter. Here is what I want you to take with you, more than any detail of the story itself. You are not broken for wanting more, but the voice that tells you the wanting will stop once you reach some future number has never once been right. Not for Tomas, and likely not for you either. Enough was never going to arrive by mail. It has to be built tonight with what you already hold in your hands. If this story gave you even a moment of that same quiet Tomas felt walking home, there are more waiting for you here, and I'd be glad to have you stay. Next time, I want to tell you about a king who traded his crown for a single night's sleep and what he asked for in return when morning came. Walk gently, hold loosely,